Hey everyone, welcome back for part 2, talking about the history and the generations and evolution of knives, more specifically the combat background. Now we're going to continue on, starting with the Bowie knife. Everybody knows the Bowie knife. Very popular knife through the years, formed in the 19th century and made popular by the infamous James Bowie. He also fell with the Alamo. It became the basis for most of fighting knives today. So like I said, Bowie knife, very popular. It kind of started the groundwork for big combat knives. And I have one that's very reminiscent of that right here. This is more of a newer knife, but it has that Bowie shape. Very big, very kind of heavy, but it's very effective when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. And plus, everybody knows the infamous line, "This is a knife." I'm sorry, I butchered that. By the time World War I, there we go, came around, the main purpose for fighting knives became that of bayonets. So, going back a little bit through history, knives started out as either tools. They started as tools for the Stone Age. Throughout time, they became weapons, like the dagger. Throughout history, blades became bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's when swords started coming around. Swords are pretty much just really big knives. And throughout history, swords became the main thing for the main weapon of choice for fighting until about guns came around. When guns came around, swords started dwindling down much more because guns were way more effective. About World War I, or before World War I, we started seeing the blades go back down in length, and now they became bayonets put on the ends of guns. Now, the oldest knife I have personally is this World War I British bayonet. This was one of the first examples of the modern era of using blades. Now, for those who don't know what bayonet is, they would take the bayonet and they would stick it on the end of their gun. That way, while shooting, they could also thrust and cut without letting go of the gun itself. Bayonets were very revolutionary for this purpose. Now, quick little fun fact for you guys. If you look at a bayonet, you can kind of tell the time period. About World War I, around the time of this knife here, they made the blades kind of wide. I don't know if you can see that from here. The camera might not focus, but we'll try. They made them wide so when they would thrust with them, the wound would be too wide to heal properly. It wasn't until later on they started going the opposite direction, and they made them even skinnier or added blood grooves, allowing air into the pocket, allowing it to pull out easier. That way they could use them more often and faster rather than more effective. I have another bayonet right here. This is an American bayonet about Vietnam era. So throughout the years, the design of the bayonet didn't change very much. As you can see, World War I, Vietnam. They didn't really change the design, but they got smaller, they got stronger, and they stayed double-sided, like daggers. This one isn't fully double-sided. I think this side stopped about here. But you'll notice they also have this ring. Ring isn't meant to put your finger through. This is a bad idea. When on the rifle, they would look through the ring, kind of like a scope, like a sight. Now, bayonets, at some point or another, became not a thing anymore. They started slowly going away. Now, most knives were designed for one of two tasks, either as a weapon or as a tool. Through the years, it was one of those two things, weapon or tool. It wasn't very common to be both. As war started happening more aggressively, World War I, World War II, as these started happening, they noticed that it is very useful to have something that could be used as both. So stuff like this knife here, this is a survival knife, things like these start coming around where they could be both. It has a leather handle for grip. It can be used as an attack. It can also be used for just normal tasks like clearing branches or opening things, or just using it as a tool as well, with a serrated edge, and even has a sharpener along with this one. Very common since World War I time to have a knife that can be used for many different tasks instead of having multiple knives for multiple tasks. This one also has a point on the handle. I'm guessing for glass breaking or any of the such. It wasn't until guns took over as the more dominant tool for battle, and some knives were designed for both, especially during the two world wars, like I just mentioned. Now as time went on, this started back when iron and steel came around. A lot of knife makers or blade makers went more toward the art side. Now, Japanese are infamous for their art style blade. The katana, the tanto, very beautiful blades, and still very effective. A lot of other people went more just the art style. I have this knife here. This is handmade. Now, once again, I'll talk about each one of these more specifically, different video. But this one is a Damascus steel. Now, I don't know the actual definition of Damascus, but it always has this general look to it. Also has a very pretty blue handle. So instead of being a tool or a weapon, a lot of blades went more toward art. So they look good. They're more for aesthetics. Yes. Now going more into the modern era of knives and using them as tools and weapons, we have many different kinds for many different purposes. This is a hunting knife, which has a very particular shape to it. This one, of course, for slashing, for skinning. It can also be used as a little hook feature. I believe this is for, correct me if I'm wrong, bone breaking and other implements involving hunting. Today, we have very infamous knives like this one right here. This is the K-bar, USMC K-bar. This is very much known for being carried around by the Marines, which is why it has the EGA on it. K-bar has the blood groove, which is very opposite of the old bayonets. This is more for allowing air into whatever you're stabbing into. These are more today's knives of choice when it comes to combat. Most military soldiers have either the survival knife I showed you earlier or something like this for if they're in a very close combat situation. They don't have their rifle or their pistol, sidearm accessible. They always have a backup knife to be used. We're going to go ahead and cut it there for part 2. In part 3, we're going to move on to the other side of knives, which is folding knives. Folding knives themselves have a long history, so we're going to talk about it in the next part, and we'll see you then.